You are at the Laidlaw Leadership and Research Program Application Workshop. It's today from 4 to 5. We'll say it a few more times, but there is an application drop-in advising session on the 28th, so next week, from 2 to 4 p.m. here at Beyond Barnard on the second floor of Elliott Hall. Hello, my name is Stephanie. I'm the Senior Associate Director of Internship Programs and Special Initiatives here at Beyond Barnard, and the Laidlaw program is one of the programs that's under my purview. I'm joined by Adam Lutz, our Administrative Assistant, and Christine Valenza Shin, the Executive Director at Beyond Barnard. As you can see, the Laidlaw program is supported by 2 departments here on campus, ours, as well as the Athena Center for Leadership. The folks over there that are involved are Chris Sneed and Umbreen Bhatti. So the goal of today's workshop is to give you a deeper sense of what is needed to put forth a really strong Laidlaw application for the 2025 cohort. I'm going to very presently show an agenda. The agenda is broken down into 5 different categories. So I would ask that any questions you have pertaining to that category, put into the chat. And at the end of each sort of mini section, we'll address any questions then. Adam will be tracking those for us. I'll just give a very brief description here of the Laidlaw Foundation and sort of the support they provide for this particular program, and then Christine will take it away to start to describe some of the program components. So it's called the Laidlaw program because it is promoted and funded by the Laidlaw Foundation. You can see there that the foundation's mission is to invest in the education of underprivileged and underrepresented in order to break the cycle of poverty, reduce inequality, and develop a new generation of leaders. Some of the primary goals are bullet pointed there: to promote ethical leadership, developing a global network of undergrads, to address international challenges by way of fostering intellectual research and community-focused learning. So as you can imagine, as a result of some of those bullet points, the Laidlaw Foundation is a program that is hosted at 20 different universities worldwide. There's a large grouping of them here in the US, with one also in Canada at the University of Toronto, as well as a variety in the UK, and even more, the program is extending to other places in Europe, as well as other countries beyond. So that global network is very much a cornerstone element of the Laidlaw program at its different host institutions. We're not going to talk too much about additional information here about the foundation. You're absolutely welcome to go to their website. You can see it there, laidlawfoundation.com, if you've not already visited. Any information specific, though, to the Laidlaw program at Barnard, please do access it through the Barnard website. Here are some of the main program elements that we're going to go into much deeper detail, but something to really keep in mind as you're preparing your application when you're considering the time commitment to this program, which runs about 18 months, right? It's a summer plus an academic year plus the summer thereafter. So you can see in the spring, summer, and fall of this year, you would begin after you're accepted into an orientation period. That includes a leadership retreat, which happens beginning in April. The retreat occurs, the orientation is in April, the retreat is 2 days in May, and then thereafter, there are 6 weeks of faculty mentored research during what we call your first summer, summer 1, or your research summer. That following fall, you participate in something called the Research Symposium, which is hosted here at Barnard. And then we participate in the Global Laidlaw Scholars Conference, which takes place in either October or November. We, together with Columbia, we hosted the global conference this year. I'm hoping that you had friends or peers that attended. It was a really great time. The following summer, so this would be 2026 for the cohort that you are applying to, is an additional 6 weeks of what's called a Leadership in Action project. This is something that you will be asked to write about or to conceive of in your actual application that occurs in an external site. And your research summer is sort of left behind, and in the next summer, you're asked to think about how you might develop leadership, project management, and advocacy skills on site at an organization, a nonprofit, or an NGO to support whatever the sort of community building mission that particular organization is geared towards. Between those 2 summers, there's additional programming. There are 5 workshops hosted by the Athena Center. We actually have our 3rd workshop next week with our current cohort. Of course, the global conference and the symposium preparation. There's an ethical leadership certificate program, and then additional requirements to participate in the Laidlaw Scholars community by way of a network, sort of like LinkedIn, but just for Laidlaw Scholars. So the point here is to really keep in mind this is a comprehensive 18-month commitment. So as you're putting together your application, think about what you can prepare now and what you can sort of envision for yourself over the next 2 years, really. So here is the agenda. As I stated, the first thing we'll talk about is research and mentors. Christine will sort of take it from here. So if you have questions about finding a mentor, about how to pursue research by way of reaching out to a mentor, go ahead and put those in the chat and we'll address those as we get to the end of this particular section.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. So first up, we're going to look at research and mentors and sort of defining and starting to think about the scope of your research. So what you want to think about as you sit down to write, complete your application and answer questions specifically about the research. At its most basic level, what are you curious about? What do you want to know? And really importantly, why do you want to know it? What's motivating you? What's compelling you to look into a particular area? And then you need to broaden your outlook and think about why might others be interested in this? Why does your particular research topic matter? And then a really challenging goal that you'll start in your application and continue to develop should you get accepted into the program. How will you explore this question in 6 weeks? So one of our most common follow-up questions when we get to the interview section is we will often follow up on what you've written in your application about how is that feasible. It can be a little hard to picture, but take your best shot at sort of narrowing down the research and thinking realistically, how will you be able to complete that research and really explore your topic in the 6 weeks? And so sometimes as you're working through your drafts, you might start out with a really broad research question, think about, can you make that smaller? Can you make it a little bit more clear? None of this is set in stone. We, at this point in the application process, want to get just get a sense of what you're thinking about, what's interesting to you, and are you able to consider scope if we think it's either too narrow or too broad. As I said, we'll raise some of that in the interview process, and then should you, again, be accepted, you would work with us and specifically with your research mentor to either broaden or narrow down your topic from there. And then you want to give some thought and give us some information about who might support and mentor your work. We'll talk about that, making some choices and opening up possibilities a little bit in a moment. It's helpful for us to know if you've engaged in this research previously. Maybe this is comes from a project or a research or an extracurricular interest that you developed in high school or in your first year here at Barnard, if you're a sophomore, or in your time here at Barnard, whether you're a first year or a sophomore. Or maybe you wrote a paper last semester and you want to expand on it. But give us a sense of, if you have engaged in this research previously, what that entailed. And then we want to hear some of your thoughts about, how does this fit with Laidlaw? Why do you specifically want to carry out this research as a Laidlaw scholar? How does it sort of connect and resonate with Laidlaw principles and the way in which the Laidlaw project is connected, as Stephanie said, to breaking the cycle of poverty, to global issues, to possible projects you'll do in the following summer. All applications, including Laidlaw, are essentially asking, why are you a strong fit for this program? Why does it appeal to you? How does your research connect to that? So finding your potential mentor. All right. And again, we want you to begin this process and use the application to let us know where you're at in the process. Sometimes this goes very smoothly and you think of a person and reach out and ask them and they agree very quickly. Sometimes it's a little bit more of a process. You need to reach out to a number of different people, talk to them a little bit in more detail before they agree. In general, both Barnard and Columbia University faculty, some of them are very familiar with Laidlaw because they will have worked with a Laidlaw scholar before, either from Barnard or from Columbia. But many faculty have not heard about it. It's, we're in our 4th year here, so it's not necessarily made it onto the radar of all faculty. So part of what you'll need to do in the process is to do a little bit of education and be, prepared to talk about what it would mean to be a mentor for this program. But where you want to start is starting to develop a list, could be long, could be short, of faculty members whose research interests you. We already have a list of interested faculty on our website, and that can be a good place to start, but it's not where you would necessarily finish, and you might not find somebody who's aligned with your interest there. So don't limit yourself to that, but that can be a helpful place to start. And there are faculty who are interested in doing this sort of mentoring. So it's really helpful in order to figure out the intersection of your research project and their expertise. It doesn't have to be exact, but if you read your bios on either their Barnard College or Columbia University website, review their scholarship. You could take a look at their course descriptions, materials and publications. You don't need to read every book they've ever written or every presentation they've ever given, but taking a look at titles, maybe at abstracts, it'll give you a sense of the type of things they focused on and see if that's of interest to you as well. And you also can take a look at their CV, and again, looking at titles, getting a sense of it. So you want to get an overall sense, and it's helpful to solicit perspectives from ourselves here on the Beyond Barnard staff, your peers who might have taken classes with them, perhaps a current or former professor you've worked with who could make suggestions. The key thing here to remember is there should be some connection between their work and your work, but it does not have to be exact. So if you have a very specific topic, or perhaps you're looking at something very interdisciplinary, you don't have to find somebody who is an expert in both of those areas or in the very specific thing you want to look at. You can think broadly about how their area overlaps with yours, and that can be part of your initial discussion with them as well. So again, keep an open mind, think about who might be good, and be prepared to talk to more than one person, because it doesn't always work out the first round. Mentors must be full-time faculty. That's not always clear from the outside. So if you have you can certainly ask them that when you're having conversations, but if you're unsure about whether your prospective mentor is considered full-time faculty, you can email us and we can check for you. So how do you go about this? Let's assume you don't know this faculty member. You've just either heard about them or someone's recommended, or you've been, looking at their page on the website. So you want to start first with an email to request an in-person meeting, right? And you want to give them a little bit of, you can give them a little bit of context about the Laidlaw program. You can certainly link them to the Barnard Laidlaw website if they want to take a look at before they get into details. Stephanie, I just want to clarify, we're talking, this all goes in the email, or this is in the conversation? How do we envision this?
I would say in the email, you can just suggest meeting up, coming to some office hours and saying, I'm a Laidlaw applicant. I'd really love to talk to you about your research. So what's listed here on these indented bullet points, I would suggest for an in-person discussion.
Yeah, that was my thinking. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page there. So the key when you're doing one of these initial reach out emails, you don't want to be super long. You want to keep it relatively concise, but do keep in mind that they may not be familiar with all the details of the Laidlaw program, even if they've heard of it. So again, giving a little bit of context, telling them a little bit about you, and then getting to, asking up front, I'd love to meet with you, talk about your research and the possibility of mentorship in the Laidlaw program. And then, as Stephanie said, in the actual meeting, your agenda would be to, talk about what you're picturing. It's always great bullet number 2, to ask about their recent work first, and then talk about your interests in general, and then get into some of the specifics about Laidlaw and how you're picturing the 6 weeks. Those last 2 points are really important. Being able to give them some ideas on how working with them could help you define your academic pathway, not just in terms of the Laidlaw, but what you're thinking about in general. And also a conversation about how you can support their work, because one option is to join, if they have an ongoing research project. We have had Laidlaw scholars who have joined on to that, and taken a part of that, or developed a part of that, and worked sort of side by side or in conjunction with a faculty member. So those are all possibilities, right? Again, share the Barnard Laidlaw website, encourage them to reach out to Beyond Barnard if they have any questions. And we're happy to fill them in on more details about what it means to be a mentor. And then after this initial conversation, you can follow up by making a formal request, be direct, ask plainly if they want to serve as your mentor, and share your responses, why you think they're a strong match. You want to be animated and excited here. You don't have to be fake or be different from your personality, but be your best self, and sort of articulate your enthusiasm and energy. If they say no, either right away or after they think about it, that's fine. Accept it. There may be a number of reasons why they don't have room in their schedule, or this particular opportunity doesn't time out well for them, and move on to your next candidate. So it's always helpful to start with that short list of people so that you have more than one option. Okay, back to Stephanie.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat. One thing I did want to highlight is that you don't have to have a 100% secured mentor at the time that you apply. This is pretty well elucidated in the application itself as well, that if you have a mentor who has agreed, you can absolutely put their name. If there's sort of a short list of other folks that you have made inquiries with, but you don't have a direct answer from, you can list those as well. But don't let the lack of a secured mentor sort of preclude the idea of application to begin with. So I just wanted to highlight that. I have a question here in the chat around a professor who might not know about their plans for the upcoming year. Could you put their name down in the application? Absolutely. Just know that if you were accepted to the program, mentors do need to be finalized sort of within the first couple weeks. I do see some questions coming directly to me, and I can guarantee you that's not the best way to get them answered. Please put them in the general chat, and Adam will collect them and be able to read them aloud. The second question here, though, is how much mentoring will the professor provide? How involved will they be? So part and parcel of the first research summer is regular meetings of the Laidlaw scholars with their mentors. You meet regularly with the Beyond Barnard and Athena staff once a week for lunch and programming. And then the mentors are someone you meet with at least once a week in addition to that. Further, you might be a part of projects they already have that are ongoing. They might be advising you on an individual project, right, that you develop. But throughout your research summer, and we're going to get to this here in a minute, you'll be writing an abstract, you will be preparing a paper, you'll be preparing a poster, and the mentor is very much a part of that process as well. Okay, so we're going to get to the research interest, right? We've talked about mentors. Let's get on to research interest as it relates to the application. So if some of you have clicked through the application already, you will recognize this question. We're asking in about 500 words for you to describe the question or questions, the research questions that you would most like to investigate. What do you hope to learn in addressing this question, and how you would envision pursuing this research? We've got a variety of sub-questions here to sort of guide you. What I really would like to highlight, and something that Christine touched on, is that this could be something that is really of interest to you now. It doesn't have to be a research interest that you've been cultivating since you were in 5th grade. It could absolutely be as a result of a class that you just took, that you just finished. It could be a class that you're beginning. It could be a result of something that you do in your extracurricular life. We just want to see that there is like a real demonstrated passion for their particular research question. Some of these secondary questions here to sort of guide you. Think the what, where, why, how, who, all of those kinds of sort of background nuances that help you get right to a very specific question. So in addition to what is it that you want to ask, explore the why. Why are you interested in it? Why might others be interested in it? Why is it relevant to the field, right, that it's a part of, sociology, Latin American studies, etc. Why does it matter to you, and why does it matter in a broader context? Christine touched on this. I think it's really important to really think about how this is a research question that can be explored in 6 weeks. So if your research question is the concept of time, that's just not a 6-week project. In fact, it's a lifelong project, right? So when you think about your research area, your research interest, begin to narrow that down, not just to a topic, but to a research question. That's why the word question is in the actual prompt. Try to drill something down to one actual question or a pair of questions you ask yourself, and then explore those in the essay answer. Along the line of a mentor, who might support this work and mentor your work, right? You are not in a vacuum. You're not pursuing research on your own. That, is not the point of college or academia. You're meant to draw off of existing scholarship and make inquiries and questions around what you know and what you want to know. So there are very much going to be other researchers, academics, interlocutors that will also care about the way that their research intersects with your particular research question. And like we said, tell us if you've previously engaged in this research, but please know it's not 100% a requirement that you've already done a very deep dive in this particular area. A really great way to get a sense of the kinds of research questions that have been asked are to look at the posters. If we were in a real room, I would ask you to raise your hand if you've seen some of the research posters. They're in Milstein on the lower level outside of those classrooms there, 001 and 002. Though that is the result of the 2024 Laidlaw cohort's research summer. They created those posters, they presented them at a symposium, which happened last September, and then we put them up for display because we're proud, and also because it gives incoming students, incoming applicants, a really great sense of what their first summer as Laidlaw scholars could look like. Sort of an extension of something that Christine said as well. When you tell us about why you're a strong fit, think not just about why you're a good researcher or why you would be a good researcher or why your research topic is super cool and absolutely no one has asked this question before, but why is it a good project for Laidlaw? And therein is the importance in thinking about Laidlaw's mission, right? To create a global network to address issues of inequity. Think about the sort of general Laidlaw mission in addressing issues faced by underserved populations. Why is your research question related to these sort of Laidlaw tenets? This question. If you are interested in an existing research project, meaning one that a faculty member already has off the ground, let us know, reference it in your essay prompt, and list the project in the question that asks about faculty mentors. It is perfectly fine to be interested in an existing project, and it's perfectly fine to pitch your own. It's 6 on one hand, half dozen on the other. There's not a preference one way or the other. Are there any questions here to the research interest application essay directly? This is not your only time to ask questions. I just want to address things in the moment. It doesn't look like it. Okay, Christine, you're up next. Second summer. Research interest is first summer. Your second summer, Christine will provide us some additional details. Christine, you're on mute.
I know. So give you a little sense of what the second summer is about, and then what we're going to, ask you about. So the second summer is described as the Leadership in Action Summer. We often call it LEA, and use the acronym there. It is a 6-week opportunity during that second summer. So for you all, it would be the summer of 2026 to practice leadership skills on the ground. And the goal is to support an underserved international community during the second summer. International does not necessarily mean you have to travel outside of the United States, although that is encouraged and supported by both us and the foundation, but there needs to be a global connection. So obviously we live in a very global city, so there are sometimes a handful of scholars who stay in the New York area, but are working with a community that has international or global ties or implications. Similarly, we have a lot of Laidlaw scholars who are international students and can potentially return to their home country, and so there's obviously a kind of built-in international element there, and yet, we'll look closely a year from now about, what the exact nature of that will be. But in any case, similar to your research, you want to think about what would you like to do in 6 weeks. It's very important to I want to emphasize you do not have to have this set in stone. And in fact, many times as both your research develops and your interests develop, there may not be a very obvious or direct link between what you research and what you end up doing your leadership in action project on. Sometimes there is. Sometimes it's very much a continuation. You learned about inequity in a particular setting, and then you go to that setting, you work with an organization that's trying to address that inequity, and there's a very strong tie. Sometimes it's a little bit looser connection, and sometimes people's interests change and evolve, and it ends up being a fairly strong pivot. But what we're trying to capture in the application is what you're thinking now. What are, as you sort of imagine and picture that opportunity next summer, what are you thinking about and why are you thinking about it? That's what we want to hear. And again, we're not going to hold you to this, but we're interested to hear where your mind is going at this point. So the sort of sub questions, ask yourself, how do you imagine engaging with the community locally or internationally in your second summer with the Laidlaw program? How might the work you do resonate globally or connect with larger scale challenges of international importance? So you just want to think about, this is where it's really important to think about the Laidlaw values, the Laidlaw goals and objectives, and becoming familiar with their website and looking at their mission statement and the various components of the organization can be helpful here to just sort of give you that broader context and sort of think about yourself within that context. So the actual question, 500 words maximum, is to describe your current vision of your second summer. The key thing here is it's going to take you out of the lab or the library or the archive. There are Laidlaw Network Leadership in Action programs. They're called central projects, which you can join. You'll join those together with Laidlaw scholars from various other schools and universities. So that's there's a number of really interesting opportunities to both engage with the community and be part of a cohort of Laidlaw scholars. Or you can propose and engage an independent project, which is almost always conducted under the auspices of or in partnership with an NGO or nonprofit, and we'll help you through that process. Again, should you be accepted, we'll be there to support the development of your LEA. But right now, what we want to know is what causes are you passionate about? What NGOs or nonprofits exist that address them? How might you transfer what you learned as a researcher to the field? And how will you display and exercise independence, right? So again, you kind of have to picture yourself in that summer. How do you both support and be part of an organization or a cohort and yet still continue to pursue your own independent journey, your own, both academically, leadership wise, and professionally? How does this fit in? And what project management experience do you have or want to develop? Because a lot of this on the ground work is about project management. Sometimes you're assigned to a particular project, or sometimes you have an idea for a project that is related to what the NGO or nonprofit does that you'll pitch. So again, just re-emphasizing current vision. It could evolve, it could change, but what are you currently thinking? And we really want you to imagine, to imagine yourself in a situation, and again, what gets you excited about the potential for this second summer. So I see a question. If we have multiple ideas, should we mention them in the essay for Leah? I would say the best framing for this is if you have a number of different ideas, pick the one that's most exciting to you at the moment, that's most resonant, and talk about that. But it actually is helpful to know if you've got a couple of alternative ideas. That can be really helpful and can give us, again, some insight into what's most important to you. So feel free to do that. I wouldn't spend equal time necessarily on 3 or 4 different possibilities. I think it's better to say my top choice or my current focus is this, but I am also open to, and then you could mention a couple others. Is there a list of Laidlaw sponsored programs somewhere? There should be on the website. Am I right about that, Stephanie?
Yeah, there's a list of faculty names, and then if you're a part of the summer program's interest list, and in fact, if you've registered for this, you'll get an email follow-up that includes a document where you can see individual projects listed that faculty have available.
I think maybe they're asking about the central projects. Sophia, is that right? That you're asking about the Laidlaw central projects for the LEA? If that's the case, there should be a description of current, am I right that there's a description of current central projects? There's no guarantee that the same central projects will be available next summer, although there are certain organizations that have done the central projects several times in a row. So, but that can give you a good sense of what some of those projects are.
And certainly if you click through to the Laidlaw Foundation's website, you'll be able to find it through there as well.
That's what I meant, the Laidlaw, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It should have been clear. Yeah, on the Laidlaw.
Sorry, Sophia, we really missed the ball there. It sounds like you got your question answered. Great.
Okay. Is this still me or it's you?
Yeah. No, this is you.
Excellent. Second summer. Global engagement. All right. So this is actually, obviously one of the key things to Laidlaw. And so you want to give us some details. How do you imagine engaging with an international community, either locally or internationally, in your second summer? How might the work you do resonate globally or connect with larger scale challenges of international importance? It's helpful for us to hear, again, what you're thinking. And this should be kind of more fun than anxiety provoking. You're really kind of saying, hey, if I get accepted to this program and am given money to travel and to make change, what would I do with that opportunity? So places are places you'd like to go. And then if you don't envision traveling that far away, how would you engage with relevant communities in other ways, either locally here in New York or back wherever home might be if you're in the US? And then some overarching, why is global engagement important to you? What does working with an international community mean to you? So all of these sort of sub questions are sort of designed to help you brainstorm and think about some details. And then you can either answer them directly in your essay or incorporate them in a way that makes sense to you. And there's a question, how specific should we be when writing about your second summer? I would say to be fairly specific of what you currently envision. You don't have to break down your budget or exactly, what project you want to do. Although if you've got an idea, great, tell us whatever you're thinking. Tell us about a couple of organizations you've looked at and why they seem appealing to you or how their mission aligns with yours. So I think be fairly detailed, again, knowing that we're just trying to get a sense of your current thinking and that this will evolve over the course of the year.
Yeah, I think what's important is we want to see good critical thinkers and writers in the application essay. So that does really mean distilling ideas and visions that you have at present. But like Christine says, if you're accepted, you're not being held to this idea, something that you created over a year in advance of when this experience would actually occur. In fact, there should be evolution. And if there's not, right, then you're not engaging the Laidlaw program in a way, right, that it is designed for. So in your vision is what we're interested in seeing, not your conclusion. That sounds good.
There's no preference for applicants who plan to travel internationally for LEA. If you have an idea for international travel, we'd love to hear about it. But if you know already that's not going to be possible for you for some reason, or if something local resonates more deeply, as long as you articulate that to us, then that's what we're looking at. We don't have a checklist or we don't have any sort of checklist on this.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, global engagement component of Laidlaw program. We want to see how you're thinking, again, critically about what that kind of engagement might mean. It doesn't have to be an international location. Okay, so we've covered first summer, second summer. Now we're going to talk about leadership, which is a component that, pervades everything that you do as a Laidlaw scholar, but in particular is something that's developed during the academic year that leads up to the second summer. So another application question that we will ask is about leadership. we want to see some of the ways that you define it. You're all Barnard students. You all were leaders in some capacity in your life before you got here to campus. Maybe you continue to be in the same or other ways. But we want to see you sort of wax a little bit both conceptual and practical about what being a leader means to you. Of course, no one is going to Google the definition of leader and include that in their application. We really want to see a bespoke answer that is specific to you and your experience. Think about what kind of strengths and skills a leader has, what kind of strengths and skills you have developed in recent years as a leader. Think also about the skills, strengths, qualities, etc., that you would love to develop as a Laidlaw scholar. So it's both looking at who you are now and what sort of comprises your all the quills in your quiver, right, of being a leader, and how you would develop as a Laidlaw scholar. We really love to see applicants imagine how they will continue right on this leadership journey over the 18 months that they are a scholar. In thinking about what future leadership looks like to you, you can talk a little bit about what you admire. Think about leaders directly in your life, right? People that you know immediately. You can think about large-scale individuals, famous people, or someone from your hometown. It can be, I think, a really good exercise to write down skills or qualities in these individuals that you think makes them really good leaders that maybe might not be typical of other ways you might define leadership, and you could find a way to fold that into your application. Answering each of these questions discreetly is not necessary. These are just meant to be guiding questions. But as Christine said with the prior essay question, you can also take them as sort of individual prompts, right, to make sure that you sort of cover all this territory. So as you can see with a lot of these sub-questions, we want to know what you've done that sort of made you the leader that you are today, and also what you would like to do to bring you into the kind of leader you might be tomorrow. So talk to us about how the Laidlaw program specifically would help you develop these kinds of leadership skills. Thinking about future goals, professional goals, career goals, scholarly, academic goals. And think about your future as a Barnard student or even beyond, what you think your life might include in graduate school or in sort of those first initial years after you graduate, or whatever your aspirations might be. Again, you don't have to know exactly leadership skill number one and the way it's going to impact your very first job after Barnard, right? We don't need that level of detail, but we're interested in students who are able to see themselves now and what they might look like, right, over the next few years. The Laidlaw program, again, one of the chief goals is to develop ethical, engaged leaders, right? It is called the Laidlaw Scholars Leadership and Research Program. So leadership and research are clearly the hallmark components of this program. Are there any leadership specific questions? Let's see.
There's another Leah question. Should we come back to it at the end?
I think we're okay to do it now.
So the question is multiple Leah projects. If we have two ideas, one being more related. Yeah. So again, there's no preference for one over the other. I would say, again, which one is most compelling to you at this moment, and write a little bit more about that one. But you certainly could add, a smaller section on also thinking about or also open to something that's direct, either more, more directly an outgrowth of the research topic or not, So again, no preference, but helpful if you can articulate it and, explain why the project resonates with you.
Mm-hmm. I think to that end as well, the leadership and action experience is by nature not research. It's not a research experience. You perform research in this very academic, sort of closed environment on campus with your faculty mentor in summer one. And then summer two is you are absolutely out in the world. And part of your tasks with whatever organization that you're at could include some sort of research type activities, but you're not in a lab, you're not in a library, you're not putting together bibliographies. It's meant to be an active experience. So, which is to say, your LEA, what you pitch or what you envision as your LEA doesn't have to be this like A to B outgrowth of your research experience. We of course want to see the ways that you feel you know, you might grow through both of them. But as Christine said, the thing that you feel is most compelling to you, right, that you're most excited by, is the best sort of foot forward to put in an application like this.
Great. So
the last thing here is, application components. Go for it, Christine.
Excellent. Okay. So you need a recommendation from a single recommendation, preferably from a faculty member. And it's usually not your proposed research mentor. There's been a few exceptions to that. Sometimes people have talked to a current professor about being their research mentor, and so you end up with a recommendation from the person who may or will become your research mentor, but they don't need to be the same, so don't get confined by that. Basically, you want to ask a faculty member who knows your work and you well. So it could be somebody that you took a smaller class with, you know, perhaps your first year seminar, your first year English professor, or another smaller class. It could be a faculty member even from a larger class, but you did particularly well. You made a connection in office hours. They, you know, gave you a lot of good feedback on a project, etc. People, you know, it can be hard if you're a first year. It can be hard to figure out somebody you've connected with, and you certainly could use the conversation about Laidlaw to get to know, you know, you could have a conversation about Laidlaw and what the reference recommendation is for them to get to know you a little bit better, for you to get to know them a little bit better. And we can certainly, you know, help you with that. It can be a little bit intimidating. You definitely want to you know, share the Barnard Laidlaw website, encourage them to be in touch with us if they have questions. It's helpful to be able to share your draft application materials with them 2 weeks in advance. That way they can know a little bit more about what you're thinking, and then can speak to that in the context of what they've seen from you as a student. So in their class. So definitely, you know, we have this conversation a lot. So if you're able to come to the drop-in advising hours for the application next week, you can tell us who you're thinking about. And you know, we're pretty experienced. We talk about this with folks applying to graduate school at various sources. So there's, you know, we can sort of, you can tell us who you're thinking of, and we can give you advice on which to pick and how to approach them. So.
I wanted to add one thing, which is the recommendation form is included in the actual application. It's a link that you yourself will share with your recommender. So that's how you manage that. In terms of looking at some of the questions here, in your research summer 1, is it okay to collect survey answers? Yes, as long as you secure IRB approval. And that's something we would help you through during that first period. Could your recommendation be from a faculty member who you worked with on a prior project but haven't taken class with? Absolutely. You need to ask the person, as is detailed here, that knows you best and that you think can speak to your capacity as a potential Laidlaw scholar. What aspects of your application do you share your essays? We think that's a great idea. You know, you want your essays to be in pretty solid form by then, but it gives them a really good sense of what you think being a Laidlaw scholar will be like, right? And how you imagine yourself being one. Sharing our Laidlaw website, right? Giving them a sense of other kinds of projects that have been done through information that you can find on our website. Always really great options. You can always tell them to be in touch with us. We have separate information that we share with, oh, but this is with a recommender, excuse me. I was thinking about a mentor. But yes, a recommender, we would encourage you to share application materials to the degree that you can and feel comfortable with. Should you ask for the recommendation soon, as in possibly in these coming days? I certainly would. The application is due the 3rd, February 3rd at 5 p.m. So I would definitely start that kind of outreach soon. Can TAs write a letter of recommendation? If you feel that a TA can best speak to who you are as a student and as a potential scholar, absolutely, yes. The major caveat is that your mentor must be a full-time Barnard or Columbia faculty member. And again, if there's confusion or questions around what that means, come to us. But your recommender is the person that can speak best to your academic experience. During the summer 1 session, is there programming over the weekend or just on weekdays? The expectation is that you work 35 hours a week for 6 weeks, Monday through Friday.
And no, we don't. We have there's no planned programming on the weekends, just during the week.
And including the retreat is a 2-day experience, and it's typically a Monday, Tuesday, or a Thursday, Friday, but it will take place during the work week.
Okay, we also need a resume and transcript. If you either haven't developed a college level resume yet, especially if you're a first year, but sometimes you've gotten to your sophomore year as well without doing that, you definitely want to do that. Or if you simply want to update your existing resume, maybe you've got a couple of new experiences you want to add to it, but go ahead and schedule with our peer career advisors. Their full hours may not be in for a couple of days like you. Some of them are still settling their schedule, but you certainly there's certainly some availability, and you can check that out. There's also, if you go to our YouTube page and the resources section of Handshake, there are sample resumes, there are resume tip sheets, and so that can all be really helpful in terms of presenting your experience and how it might relate to the Laidlaw program. Definitely want to tailor that. Consider adding things like research experience, leadership experience and service, community engagement. This, you can be in academic opportunities such as this, especially that first summer, you can be flexible in how you present your experience. And if you're not sure how to do that, PCAs can be a great guide. There's also drop-in hours as well. So strong resumes curate the experience for the position to which you're applying. So you want to keep it to one page, and you want to be selective about, and you want to highlight the things that are most relevant to Laidlaw, but also keep in mind transferable skills. So you may not have done a lot of research before, but you could talk about writing skills or organizational skills or project management skills. They may not have been labeled that in the particular experiences you had, but think about your extracurricular activities, think about any jobs or internships you've had, think about various roles you've had, and what transferable skills could be relevant to Laidlaw. And we just, the question we always get, and we get this from first years to seniors to graduates, is my grades aren't good enough. My experience isn't good enough. Don't just try and, it's very common for those voices to be in your head, and you can listen to them for a second and then just try and put them aside and say, my perceptions don't matter. The work I've done academically, the work I've done outside of classes, all of that is potential, potential good things to include in the resume and to write about and talk about in your interview. So just be inclusive. And if you're having trouble with that, we're happy to talk that through with you. All right, so we have an application workshop. That's today. We are here. Next week, we have drop-in workshop advising from 2 to 4 p.m. here at Beyond Bar, Elliott Hall on the second floor. If you haven't been here before, the application closes at 5 p.m. on February 3rd, and recommenders letters are also due at that time. Throughout February, we will review those applications and select students invited to interview. So you'll hear from us mid to late February if you've been asked to be interviewed and given times to set up those interviews. We will let you know of our final admission decisions by March 14th. That happens to be the Friday before spring break, which then gives you 10 days, including spring break, to accept or decline the offer. So some of you may want to accept right away. Some of you may have other possibilities or even questions about how to juggle some of your different possibilities. And even though there's no classes during spring break, we're here if you're having any questions during that contemplative period as you decide whether Laidlaw is the thing you want to accept. So then you'll let us know whether you decline or accept. We will schedule very soon the orientation session and a prep for summer research. And then leadership training and kickoff will take place in the second half of May. And then the 6 weeks of research parallel Barnard and Columbia Summer A. So that is, generally speaking, the Monday following graduation through the next 6 weeks, which sometimes I think so it's probably going to take us from late May into very early July will be the 6 weeks, but we'll firm that up, and that'll be clear all the dates will be clear before you decide whether to accept or decline the invitation. So, but in the meantime, this has come up from time to time. Be careful if you've already made travel or vacation plans for around the time of finals or those last 2 weeks of May, and you have any questions about that, let us know. It's a little tricky. You don't know whether you're going to get accepted, and you don't know whether you're going to accept your place. But if your mom or dad or best friend or summer camp is already reaching out to you and wanting you to commit to something on May 20th or May 28th or something, be in touch with us about that and about whether that's going to be feasible. So. Okay, and then, yeah, research projects and required cohort meetings. Then we send you off at the very early in July, and you can continue to work on your research paper throughout the summer, and we'll see you again for the symposium in the fall.
Yeah. There was a question directly to me around the specific dates for summer 1. We're still finalizing them depending on the official date of graduation. But the retreat, the 2-day retreat, will be mid to late May. Research kicks off right afterwards, usually that following Monday, and it's 6 total weeks. We anticipate it going into that first week of July. But once dates are 100% finalized, we'll post those in all the relevant places online. But I think, as Christine was really trying to drive home, the retreat and the research summer are on campus. It's a non-negotiable requirement to be on campus. But the reason that is because it's an incredible cohort building exercise. All the Laidlaw scholars live on campus. We meet weekly for programming and lunch. We work with you on the development of your abstract and preparing for the symposium that Christine mentioned in the fall. It's a really wonderful, enriching time. So being on campus from mid-May until very early July is a requirement, but for a reason. It comes with really great benefits.
And to that end, if you are thinking about other things you want to do with the rest of your summer, again, I would just keep, if you wanted to take a job, go back to work at a camp, do an internship, just look at July 7th and on. So that, but again, if you've got conflicting deadlines and you're not sure, if you're waiting to hear back from us and you need to tell somebody else, come in and talk to us. That's very often there can be a little bit of juggling, and we can help facilitate that.
There's a question here about programming within the entire Laidlaw community. So the Global Laidlaw Conference, which takes place on a yearly basis, is something that all scholars are very highly encouraged to attend. 2 years ago it was in the University of Toronto. Before that it was Boston. This past year we hosted, and that's a really wonderful time to be in touch with scholars from all the other institutions. Once you become a Laidlaw Scholar as well, you are a part of the Laidlaw Scholars Network. Adam has actually just put in the chat there a link for the central projects that you can read about. It's on the Scholars Network, which, as I mentioned, is sort of a LinkedIn, but specifically for Laidlaw folks. And there's lots and lots of opportunities, invitations to events, ability to view other scholars' research projects and LEA experiences. There's a lot of sort of cross-pollination between institutions on that platform as well.
There's another question. Is there programming within the entire Laidlaw community that includes other institutions?
Oh, wait, that's what I just answered. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So, and there is, we do a couple of joint events with Columbia over the research.
Oh, sure.
The research summer. Yeah, and then there's some additional, there's lots of opportunities to connect with people online too. So what does research generally look like for students on a daily basis? I'd say most students generally research by themselves and meet together for programming, but sometimes people who are working on similar projects will, sort of get together. But yeah, it really depends on your project. If you're in a lab or actively working on a project with a professor and other, sometimes it's even other students outside of Laidlaw who are working on something, it might be more collaborative. But yeah, a lot of it could be in an archive or, scrolling databases or reaching out to possible survey people, it really varies, but yeah, it's mostly, spending most of your days, you'll set out a timeline and, part of what we'll talk about is time management and task management. But generally speaking, yeah, there's a fair amount of connection. If you live on campus, you'll be living relatively close to each other. And we have had requests in other summers for, is there a room where we can hang out together and write, and things like that. So we do whatever we can to facilitate connection.
And there's also there's other community programming that Beyond Barnard hosts for all summer programs that are here that you'll receive invitations to, community meals. If any of you saw the food truck last summer, that was something the Laidlaw scholars were invited to. I'll say as well, I think this particular question could be best posed to your potential faculty research mentor. Different faculty have different needs or are going to support you in different ways. And there are some students that might meet 2 or 3 times a week with their faculty mentor or touch base in different ways. So the day-to-day, I think what Christina is saying, particularly with students in the humanities and social sciences that tend to apply for Laidlaw, might do research on their own, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily alone the whole time, right? It could look different ways for different kinds of initiatives. We'll hang around here for another few minutes for questions. If you didn't sign in, please do so. This lovely photograph was taken from the gala, the very lovely gala dinner that we hosted as a part of the conference in November. Are there any other questions? If you scan the QR code here on the slide, you should be able to.
Is housing free over the summer? So yes, part of the the Laidlaw Foundation covers the 6 weeks of Barnard, so summer A housing, and then what's called interim housing. We'll be sending you details. Those working that out with Res Life takes place in early April. So we'll send you details on that should you get accepted. But yes, your housing costs are covered, but not if you're staying in New York and you're going to be here later into the summer and want to, you can certainly apply for summer B, but you would have to pay for that yourself. So.
And you don't get, we should say to clarify, you don't get a housing stipend where if you don't live on campus, you therefore get additional money to pay for rent someplace else. Your housing is covered if you live on campus, which is what almost everybody, I think if not everybody, has done in the past. And we should say too, housing is absolutely covered and you will get instructions around this, but it's also your responsibility to apply for summer housing. We can't cover it for you if you don't put in the application with Res Life, but if you're accepted, you will get information around how to do that. It looks like the QR code is giving some folks some hiccups. I don't know if Adam, you can troubleshoot that right quick just to make sure, but I see one additional question. Is it okay if you meet with your mentor virtually? Yes, if your mentor said that they may not be on campus, we think it's always better if you can meet face-to-face, but if the research is really exciting to you and you think it'd be a really good match, or even if they've already agreed to be your mentor, meeting with them virtually is fine.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick about the handshake error. Stella, you were exactly right in the chat. The registration for it closes as soon as the event is over. We are now at 5:02. The event ended at 5. So if you're in the situation where you have not been able to register, just shoot an email to laidlaw@barnard.edu and we'll be sure that we track your attendance here.
I also want to note that if you came into the Zoom via handshake, so in other words, you clicked on the Zoom link within the handshake event, you're automatically recorded as here. So if you did that, but if you came into the Zoom like either through an email or from your calendar as opposed to through the handshake event registration. So you can always email us as a backup, but we should have captured most of you. So. And
I see one more question. Oh,
sorry. I was just thanking them all for coming.
Oh yeah, I'll answer one more, right, and then I mean you're all free to go anyway. But the slides from this presentation will be circulated afterwards anyway. But the question here: does Laidlaw help with continuing research over the academic year and with pursuing graduate school? I might ask a follow-up question there to you. Do you mean with financial assistance? I mean, this is something that Beyond Barnard definitely provides advising around and counseling in and helping you find graduate school opportunities, but could you clarify? to the person that asked? I don't see anything else. I think we will officially say thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to read your applications. Please do come to the drop-in advising hours next week. I will be there. Christine will be there. Adam will be there. We're there to help. All right, folks. Thanks. Have a good evening. Stay warm.